let's talk about the theory behind hexagonal modular terrain for tabletop games. So we want to talk about the theory behind all the geometry that actually makes the modularity of the hexagons actually work, so you can fully take advantage of the hexagon shape if you're going to go to all the trouble to make hexagonal modular terrain anyway. We should also ask, do you even want to go to all the trouble to make hexagonal modular terrain? What is it going to do for you? For many gamers, hexagonal modular terrain is kind of like the holy grail of modular terrain systems that they want to have on their tabletop. Well, why? Well, it's because of the versatility and the flexibility and increased modularity of the modular terrain system. A lot of people make modular terrain and they are based on square tiles or square, pieces of terrain, however large they're going to be. And that is fantastic. That is great. There is a whole lot that you can do with it, and it can absolutely look fantastic. But the issue that some gamers want to try to solve is that that square can only be turned 4 different ways in order to have 4 different orientations on the table for different modular configurations. If you build all of your modular terrain on hexagons, then you've got 6 different ways to turn each one of those tiles, and that increases the modularity and increases the flexibility of your tiles and the different types of battlefields that you can create because you've got 6 faces instead of 4. They also allow you to get much more organic shapes for things in the natural world, especially streams, but also the edges of hills that aren't very regular. Sometimes when you're making modular terrain out of squares, things can look a bit square, but you can make things look much more organic with things twisting across your battlefield if you're using hexagons instead of squares. The downside to using hexagons is they can be very difficult to make. I tried to make a hexagon terrain system, modular terrain system, for Warhammer Fantasy Battles years and years ago, and I was trying to cut all of the different hexagons out of styrofoam. I tried several different techniques to get really good hexagons cut out of styrofoam, and that was just basically impossible. I gave up with the project. Using all of the methods that I had at hand, I wasn't able to cut precise enough hexagons to fit together to be able to go across the entire table, because it's easier to cut squares, that's for sure. If you're trying to cut hexagons, you've got to get all of the angles very precise, because if you don't get them precise, that error is going to propagate across the entire table, and the hexagons are not going to fit together, and it's not going to give you the result on your tabletop that you're looking for. And I mean, that's a shame, because we all know how great it theoretically could look if you do all of this with hexagons. So as almost everything in the world is, it's a trade-off. Do you want to go to all the trouble of creating the hexagons versus the ease of creating the squares? Are you going to get a better table that's worth it to you to go to all the hassle? You may be able to buy hexagonal tiles or have them laser cut. So that's another option today. I would certainly look into having hexagons laser cut if I were trying to create a hexagon base for a modular terrain system. But that's additional expense. That may be fine for some people, it won't be for other people. Basically, your terrain system is getting more expensive if you're trying to buy all of these custom cut hexagons for your terrain system. So do you want to build one anyway? Well, if you do want to be certain that you are taking advantage of the hexagon shape after you've made it all. Because I have seen situations where people have gone to all the trouble to have hexagonal terrain, but then they didn't even take advantage of it within their modular system. And then I was like, why? I found someone online when I was trying to make my system who did manage to get some extremely precise hexagons cut and had a fantastic table of these hexagons. But none of their linear terrain features actually ran on or off of the hexagons. And if that's the case, basically there was no reason for that. They just had these very nice, precise hexagons cut. They were very nicely flocked. They looked very nice. They were very precise. They fit across the table without gaps. But then they just put other standalone hills on top of it. And you know those tiles that are often used in war games that are the linear streams that you just lay them down on your table? They just laid those across their hexagons. And so I was wondering, why in the world did they go to all that trouble to create all of those really nice hexagons if they didn't actually take advantage? And taking advantage of them means that linear features on your tabletop, whether that's a road, a path, a stream, a river, or that edge of a hill, actually has to run onto and off of hexagons in order to make the organic shapes that you want and to create the kind of table that a hexagon terrain system could actually make. So that's key. If you're going to make a hexagonal terrain system that's modular, you need to make sure that the linear features of your battlefield actually run across enter and exit your hexagonal tiles. That's what's going to be able to create the organic shapes that hexagonal terrain, modular terrain systems are known for. Now, in order to make all of that work, you've got to adhere to two different principles, and this is what's going to make all the geometry of your table work. So first of all, the linear features that you're putting on the table, that's your, like I said, your streams, your rivers, your roads, whatever, they all must enter and exit the tile at the center of each face. That's what's going to make all of these different things line up. So for example, I've got some different hexagons over here on this paper, and they're kind of an odd size, but they will do for demonstration here. So if this is my hexagon tile that I've got the center of each face, here, 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 and here. I'm just eyeballing the center, but what's important when you actually make these for yourself is that you actually measure out the center and actually know where all the centers of the tile faces are. And that means that any feature, whether it's a stream, river, road, whatever, that's going to come onto a tile has to do that at the center of one of the faces. And then it can go wherever it wants to go on the tile itself. That's your opportunity to be extremely creative and be able to have a bunch of different organic shapes on the tile itself. So maybe this is a stream that's coming in here. So I've got a stream coming here, and this is going to be a straight piece. So I want the stream to be exiting the tile at this center point right here. So geometrically, you basically have three options for your linear features. You've got a straight tile, which means you enter here and exit here. You have a curve, which means you enter here and exit here. And you have a sharp curve that enters here and exits here. So that's what I call them: straight, curve, and then a sharp curve. What happens on the tile doesn't matter. What matters is you have the entry and exit point right, and then all tiles that have the same entry and exit points end up with the same geometric function on the table. Maybe over here, I've got another one that I'm going to make a curve out of, and so I want this to be this weird shape like this, and then it has to leave the tile right there. And so now I've got a stream like that. By the way, if you're doing streams, I found that it's very useful to not put any type of current on the stream, because you want to be able to rotate these in any direction. And if you've got a discernible current to a stream or river on a hexagonal terrain piece, then you're limiting the number of ways that it can be turned, because you always see, oh, the water's flowing this way. And then if I put it against another tile that has the water flowing this way, it's not going to look right. So what you want to do for all of your flowing water features is make sure that there's no discernible current in there. So it looks like it could be flowing either way, and that way you have maximum flexibility in turning them in whatever direction you want, and all of your streams will look good. Streams and rivers will look good across the table. So that's principle number one. Enter and exit all tiles at the very center. The second principle is that all linear features that are going to be running across your table have to have a consistent width anytime they enter or exit a table. Once again, what happens to that width while it's on the tile doesn't matter. What matters is that once it reaches the entry point or exit point of a tile, it returns to that standard width. Now, you can have different standard widths for different linear features. Your streams can be one width, your paths can be another, your roads can be another, your rivers can be another width, but you pick one consistent width for each type of linear feature you've got, and then you keep that consistent anytime that they are going onto or off of a tile. So for instance here, this is a weird shape. I just printed these off for examples, or a weird size rather. But for instance, if that's my center here, and this is going to be a stream, for instance, I might decide that the streams are always going to be 1 inch wide. So here, and then it's leaving here, and then over here, and then over here. So that's 1 inch anytime it enters or exits, and I can do whatever I want. Maybe over here there's this boulder on this one, and maybe there's another boulder over here that I want to build, and so I'm going to have the stream come together and constrict on this tile, come down like this, and that's fine, but then it's got to open back up and be at 1 inch again on this side. And then this way, this will fit seamlessly with any other tile that goes by it. And likewise over here, maybe this time we're actually going to have this open up and be kind of like a pool or something, kind of like a little pool on this tile. and do something like that. And that's fine. I can open up into this pool here, but I've got to make sure that it's 1 inch over here and 1 inch over here. If you're going to be doing hills, and this kind of gets into three-dimensional theory, and I've done some three-dimensional hex terrain. I've got a project going on with three-dimensional hexes in the workshop. I've got to get back to it and get it out, and then I can show more about three-dimensional terrain. But some people will want to build hills into their hexagons, and I recommend it. If you're going to go to all the trouble to do hexagonal terrain like this, then maybe you should build in hills. Now, of course, you don't have to, and some people will just stack up like a riser or something under their hexagons in order to create hills. You'll have like level 1 hills and level 2 and level 3 and level 4, and that's fine. It creates a very hexagonal look to your whole terrain setup and your whole battlefield. That's not a problem, though. It looks very old school. It can look really neat, and of course, that does allow you to have the most maximum reuse of all of your tiles because you're not committing to any particular elevation on any particular tile. If you're committing to elevation on the tiles, the hills on them, you're going to have to make more tiles. That'll be worth it to some people. It won't be worth it to other people. But, for instance, your ridge lines of your hills, or the edges of your hills, adhere to the same principle as all of your linear features. So let's say I'm doing a hill here, and I want it to come from here, and I'm going to do a hill turn. And so the line of the hill can do something fun and organic like that on this tile, and this will be level 1, and then I want to go up here, and this is level 2, so you're going up to a hill, or down if you're going this way. I won't be able to draw this very well, but if you're looking at this, this would be stacked hexagons. We'll show this when I get out my 3D hexagons from the workshop sometime. But if you're looking at the edge here, so here is this, and then here is this edge. Well, no, here is this edge right here. So this needs to come down like that. Pretend like that's not here. And then this edge comes here. And then here, pretend like that's not there. And so here are 2 hexagons stacked on top of each other. You've got a base hexagon that's 1 full hexagon, which is providing this base level of 1. And then you've got this part of a hexagon right here, which is a second hexagon on top of it. So all of your hills are built out of parts of hexagons. And that's your level 2 right there. But you've got an entry and an exit right there, and that way when you take all of your different hills and line them up, they all fit together. Let me demonstrate these principles using these. These are Terratiles. This is a project that I did with my brother after scratch building my terrain failed. We decided that we needed some terrain, and so we did Terratiles. We brought these to Kickstarter, and we created these hexagonal tiles with all these different terrain features on them so we could have a really nice looking battlefield. All of these that were printed for that Kickstarter have actually sold out, but I've had people ask me, can I still get some Terratiles? So we might return to the Terratiles line. Update. We are returning to the Terratiles line. I just received approval for the Terratiles project by the GameFound crowdfunding site. The draft page is up right now, so you can check it out. The link is down below. If you click the follow button on the Terratiles page on GameFound, I will even send you a free box of special themed Terratiles if you then back the campaign for at least 4 boxes. So check out the page if you might like to get some Terratiles for your table. But in the meantime, let's take a look at them because we used all of these principles, or these 2 principles, when creating our Terratiles and all of the terrain features that are on them. So for instance, this is a sandy shore, and it's kind of a concave curve here, but it's a straight piece. You see, I've got the enter and exit points of the shore here in the very center of these 2 different sides. So this functions geometrically as a straight piece, but we do have this bend in it, so it's not just straight all the way across the tile. We've got the artistic representation here. Here is an example of our path. So this is a straight piece of the path. Enters and exits the very center of the tile here. And I believe that the width of the paths was 2 inches. Yep, 2 inches and 2 inches. So you'll see that we've got all of our entrances and exits of the path at the center, and then we go to a width of 2 inches at the edge of the tile. What happens in the center doesn't matter. So for instance, here's another path. So we've got a curve this time. We've got a little bit of a variation in the shape of the path here, but it's 2 inches, 2 inches, center and center, and that's what allows these 2 paths to line up just like they should and be modular. We can go over here, Put these together. That's modular terrain working just like it should. Same thing here. Here is an example of a rocky coastline. So this is a curve in the rocky coast. Center point, all of the artistic expression of the curve. This is the rocky coast. Another path. You can see we got a bulge here, but it doesn't matter because center, 2 inches. This is a neat piece because it is the cove that is inside the rocky shoreline. So you can see it also enters center and center. So you can take another piece that's the rocky shore and boom, there you go, line up. Boom, line up. It all works. Got the rapids. There's another curve of the rocky shore. This piece right here is a sharp curve. This is on the sandy shore. But center right here, we've got this kind of peninsula out here that's sandy here. But it enters and exits at the halfway point. So this is a sharp curve for coming out in the sand. Another path. Well, for instance, here is the sand. Here's a concave curve. And we can go here. See how that lines up? And see how that lines up right there? That's, again, hexagonal terrain working like it should. So I've got other examples of Terratiles here, but I really don't think I need to get into them. I think that you've definitely got the idea here. I do want to show you, I suppose, this about designing some hexagonal terrain. I was thinking about, this is tundra and a snow set that I was thinking of. So one thing you want to do if you're thinking about planning out your hexagonal terrain is don't just go into it and start building whatever. You probably want to think about what different types of tiles you want to have. So for instance, this is like a tundra set I was thinking about, and I wanted to be able to have like paths on this, and I also wanted to have streams being able to flow throughout the snowscape. And so I was thinking geometrically here. I wasn't trying to measure all of this out, so you can't come in here and measure an exactly center point, exactly center point, and exactly center point, and exact width. I was not trying to get into that level of detail with this. I was just trying to plan out, for instance, how many open snow tiles do I need? How many different straight tiles do I need? I can make these a bit more organic and interesting when they're actually being made. But I've got 2 different straights here, and then I've got a sharp curve here, and then 2 general curves. And then I was also looking at some half pieces about how to fill in those half gaps here. And something similar here about the plan for what type of streams I'd like to have with fords, different kinds of curves. So you want to plan these out, and you can even scan them into the computer and crop them out, and that way you can start building things on the computer and figure out, do you have enough of one tile or not enough of a certain tile or too many of another tile, and is this going together in a sufficiently organic way in order to create the kinds of battlefields that I want to be able to create. So I just created this sheet on in Adobe Illustrator with all these hexagons, and then I sat down with a pencil and some markers and some paint, and I sort of put these together. But you'll notice the theory in application right here, so I know what to build. Just for instance, things that you don't see, you never see a stream coming in like right here and leaving like right there, because that violates the principle of leaving and entering the middle. This would be a worthless tile to me because it would not be able to connect to anything else, or anything along this edge. So this shows you all of the different geometric structures that I need, and I can be much more organic when they're actually being built. All right, I think that's all we need to say about the theory behind the geometry of modular hexagonal terrain. We can talk in a later video about going into 3 dimensions when I get all of that out of a workshop. But in the meantime, also, if you plan to make some modular terrain and you use these principles, I would really like to see what you build. You can tag me on Twitter, or you can post it on Instagram and tag me as well. I would love to see what you make. In the meantime, if you've enjoyed this video, please go back to my channel. I've got a lot of other videos on tabletop, on fantasy, on action figures, other topics. I organize all of my videos in playlists, so just go over to my channel, go to the playlists, pick the topic that interests you most, and just dive right in. I look forward to seeing you in a lot more videos, but until then, happy gaming.